Inside the Montesino in Vienna, time takes on new meaning. The players sitting around this table can't escape the pressure of the ticking clock. This non-stop 48-hour cash game demands huge reserves of stamina and an amazing ability to concentrate. Few have stayed the course as we head into the final quarter of this epic encounter. And for those that have, the pressure of time becomes ever more urgent.
The urgency has never really left this table as the chip stacks rise and fall with each turn and river. But if this 48-hour game really is an endurance test, then Phil Laak may well have hit the wall. Confusion reigned as Laak, the only player left from the original lineup, raised more than a few eyebrows when throwing away a winning hand and sacrificing a sizable pot.
Wait,
Did Phil muck his hand?
what? I wonder what's going to happen in the bet because he bet he had the best hand. He actually did have the best hand.
The cards unseen by the rest of the table provoked plenty of debate and a side bet which rumbled on. Laak, unaware of his blunder but all too aware of his reduced stack, played on. The dynamics of the game changed as the curse of a single hand plagued the table for some time to come. Laak, while remaining the leader, had exposed a chink in his armor. For others, the opportunity was there for the taking, but the opportunity often escaped those chasing Laak. Alec Torelli's kings outplayed by Samuel Chartier's straight.
Every time he runs it twice, he gets half a pot.
Just as Chartier's confidence rose, Scott Seiver cut him down to size with a blow so severe that it effectively ended Chartier's time around the table.
Chartier snap calls.
I don't think he's gonna.
He's taking in the last 700 and putting it in his pocket, and he's done for the day.
For Scott Seiver, that hand marked a turning point that saw him comfortably move into profit.
Just gonna call. Wow, Scott gets very lucky on that river.
Even though Moseley was in weight, the barrel just busted him off the hand.
Andy Moseley had benefited from Laak's earlier misfortune and continued to quietly build a healthy-looking profit margin into his game.
A huge flop for Moseley. This is gonna just spin out.
Yeah, Moseley's flopped a pair and an open-ended straight flush draw. You can't whack a flop any more than that.
Tension between Alec Torelli and Tony G had bubbled under the surface from the moment that these two faced each other. The two repeatedly clashed, and once again, they squared up, and this time the cards fell for Tony G.
If Torelli wins this, he may be the big winner.
Slow roll.
He slow rolled him.
The game is on.
But Torelli was never far away from success and ended the last session on the right side of the profit and loss leaderboard, particularly after this clash with Scott Seiver.
And he's going for the check raise for value here with ace-jack. Yep, he is. Alec is all in, and Scott is thinking, I do not expect him to fold here. Oh my God, he folds it.
This is a cash game. That pot was, 200,000 euros.
It all leaves the table with a more evenly balanced look. Laak, while past the 100K mark, has Torelli breathing down his neck. Seiver, Moseley, and Karmazinas in profit. Only Tony G struggling at the moment. Controversy still raging around the table as the small matter of the side bet provoked by Laak's mistake rumbles on.
Oh, wow, what if I gave up the 60?
You were betting on what he thought he had, not on...
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
so
I got to win.
you
You got
got
to pay me. Of course you have to pay me. I thought I was trying to get some magic on the flop. What do you think? Of course you have to pay me. I can't get cheated. I mean, you're not getting cheated, obviously.
Phil Laak seems relatively unfazed by this.
Then you're going to win. There's no problem.
Only goes towards his unhumanness.
That's why.
There's a lot of dynamics here.
I remember thinking I should look back at it in case.
Well,
or you should have just done the whole explosion.
look at Phil's face right now.
Stoic Phil Laak.
Oh yeah, that would have been a very strong play.
Everyone's I'll find out what the...
You got to pay me.
Insane.
Hey, ask the camera guys what I had.
What's wrong with you, Phil? Anyway.
Phil, you had ace-6.
You're not on the training. I used to train for this.
What did he have that hand?
What's wrong with him? He's been playing 30 hours.
It's so crazy. Is it in the blog?
Yeah, you definitely met the best hand. I've had like 25 texts going, you're so blessed. And then Wong just going,
You guys
that
gotta find
idiot
me."
deserves that for that ridiculous outfit.
Wow, I wonder what it had.
Check. Check.
By the way, I like Laak's outfit. What are you saying?
No, it's in the stream, yeah.
It's a live stream. They're looking at the.
No, well,
60 grand.
graphics or is it actual? Well, don't just reach into my
phone's blowing
pocket.
Yeah.
We have to
like decide on this. I don't know if it's
I have to win. I bet on his hand. I didn't bet on him like making a mistake.
This is definitely an issue.
I bet on his hand.
Yeah, 3,000.
I mean, that's one
And
way, but it's not
obviously, well, there's a hand going on here, but
In my favor.
It's not automatic.
obviously,
Automatic in
Dom
my
bets
favor.
him,
there's a
picks
couple
up the pot.
3,000 side bets between Tony and
I can't control his
the other boys, but for Phil Laak, 60,000 euros.
You gotta be fair. You can't cheat me. You can't cheat me.
If my hand
You
should
can't
have
cheat
won.
me.
Is that what you think?
Yeah, because
I thought that all the information
he was
you were
taking my
going
hand
on-
versus his hand,
No,
not my
but
ability to
what
play
you
my
guys
hand.
were betting on was
My hand versus your
yeah,
hand.
and your body language and reaction at
Right.
the time, which was
That's
all
something
based
to
on the
factor
fact that
in
you.
too.
I thought he was bluffing. I thought he was lying when he said it, and I
Yeah,
was
exactly,
right.
and he wasn't.
That's what I thought.
He wasn't lying.
weren't right.
He was lying. He
No,
did
he
not.
wasn't. Why, if he was lying, why did he then
What are
not
you getting
bet?
involved?
Phil Laak ahead 115,000, but it could be 68,000 more. That's how much Andy Moseley took from him in the pot that Phil mucked. Then think about Torelli versus Seiver. Torelli bluffing Seiver off the 2 kings in what was potentially an 120,000 euro pot. And what about the side bets that Tony G made? 3,000 euros each.
What's confirmed that I had ace-6?
Is that the grab
the 6?
or like ace-6? That's what you had. Ace-6.
Was it suited or unsuited?
Unsuited. Ace of hearts, 6 of clubs.
How much? I can't see. Like your hands blocking it.
do I have?
Yeah. What did you start with?
I mean, I guess I'll give it to you, but fuck, like
Maybe 30.
And he's making a play here with the 7 deuce.
from having been in the
When it's been
when they put the graphics.
Torelli has the real hand, the kings.
He's been a bit quiet, Dominic, hasn't he? He just can't help himself.
I don't think he can, and this is a great spot for Torelli to re-raise, actually, because some people just like to suicide with that 7 deuce.
Parlay that you can't remember what your cards were.
I just remember thinking, I'm going to get it through aggression. I remember thinking
But the
that.
hand's confirmed beyond reasonable doubt. They told me.
I think I played it poorly. I should have re-examined my
Like I
hand.
wouldn't take it.
No, of course. Leave the card. You know I don't think.
Wow, Torelli's just called here. I mean,
Shocked and confused.
be interesting to see if Dominique can get out of this without doing his stack here.
That's not what it is.
I guess he's in bad shape if he picks up a piece of it.
You can always come back if there's any other evidence. If Jesse tells you otherwise, of course I'm not going to keep the money.
He decides to just call with those kings. He's got Dom in a world of hurt right now with this flop. Drawing to running spades,
Now I'm not gonna forget this.
running 7s, or running deuces.
I know this better than what he knows. It's insane.
I can't believe I didn't look at my hand.
2,300.
How insane is that?
And if you're Torelli here, you once you've committed to this story, you just call,
He hit the 6, but
right?
he doesn't
Yeah,
know
once he
that.
calls free flop, because he's not representing hands like aces and kings and queens. It's better, he's in position, it's better for him to just call every street. Especially on a board like that. I mean, how often does he really have those 2 clubs? And if he does and gets there, it happens. The line he's taking on this hand, I think Torelli should be just calling here.
He genuinely thought that. Raise 8,000.
He's trying to get Dominique to.
I really do not like this raise here. He decided to just flat the 3-bet to pre-flop to hide the strength of his hand. I think he should, in position here, he should have continued to just call and continue with that same line and that same story and allow Dom, who's a bluffer, to bluff into him potentially on 3 streets. But now he just can't continue. The
And
jig
yet,
is up.
it is, and yet it's so weird for Torelli to raise there. It's a really polarizing. I mean, either you're trying to represent 3 4s or like.
Doesn't have a 4 there very often. Probably a queen or a club draw.
And it's listed as, oh my god, Phil Laak had ace-6 and folded the best hand.
This is the time to jump in the game. Nobody's really paying attention to the game right now. And Phil's gonna lose it.
I mean, the fact that Phil is kind of,
He's out.
just the fact that Phil is kind of holding it all together right now. I'm actually kind of,
Tony,
I thought
I'm so
I thought he would have quit by now, and he hasn't.
Well, I guess he's
think
waiting for
he's gonna-
confirmation still, but
Yeah, but he's like, I mean, he's
Believe me, I
gonna
wouldn't mind
weather
losing the
through it.
bet had, like, turned around.
He's just gonna get over it.
Yeah, obviously it's the worst.
Yeah,
Fold.
it's just,
I'm so tilted I can't
and the fact
remember.
that they're even pressuring me on the blog now gives me like this weird false hope
See,
that I know isn't going to come through, and like it's weird.
I believe that there's
sorry.
a way to look at the
600
truth.
and
Oh yeah,
fold.
of course there is.
2 players.
They just need to do it.
Well, there's no rush. We can do it tomorrow, the next day, whatever.
This whole thing, and there have been some big controversies in the big game before.
I'm tending to believe it's an 860.
And this is, but this is not really controversy. This is just drama, if you know what I mean, Scott. This just shows you
Everyone saw it.
what happens. This is why it's not recommended to play 48 hours in a row.
right. And I wonder what he'll do if in fact he did fold the winner. Like, will he tilt off the rest of the stack? Will he power on and play? Will he
I think
get up
he is,
and leave?
He is going to keep playing, I think, because that's just the kind of guy he is. I mean, a lot of people are aware of something that happened with Phil Ivey 2 years ago in the main event of the World Series of Poker.
Right, I saw that.
And you know, he folded the winner after the same kind of thing. He mucked the winning hand. It was quite a big pot. He still went on to go to the final table. But like people said at the time, well, if Phil Ivey can do it, anybody can do it.
Sure.
And, you know, there is a general idea that it may have cost Phil Ivey a lot more than 60,000 euros.
And most people at home don't play on TV tables, so people can be doing it all the time and not even realizing it. And you'd be none the wiser for the rest of your life once you fold that winner.
Yeah, I think when you consider all the millions and hands that get played everywhere, it is
Probably go back
happening.
to another 10 years where I put my hand on its back.
Amazing stuff. Amazing stuff. And look, Phil
The thing
Laak
that
is going to, he's a
sells it is
gambler. He's going to
people
get
watching
over
the
the
webcam.
60,000 euro swing.
All the people
Yeah.
watching it saw it.
Big blind, please.
Somehow that hand's managed to get like the whole table steamed. That one hand.
You're not steamed. There's no way you got you steamed.
I'm not steamed.
Double straddle.
Shit, Alec might not come back.
Raise.
Raise 500.
He might not come back.
Andy Moseley raises it up to 500.
I can tell.
We don't know what he has yet, but
Raise 1,900.
Dom
trying to do
cannot
right now is
control
not
himself and
finish the
re-raises. And
meltdown. Trying
again,
to leave the game
kings
with a little
when
problem.
Dom three
That's
bets.
what I'm doing.
And these guys keep flatting with kings because they know he's full of it when he puts in the 3-bet because he does it all the time.
Exactly.
Is this like the fourth
But
time?
Scott, yeah, he's run into kings quite a few times. Scott, however, decides to 4-bet here.
Fold.
Andy's going to fold. And now when it gets back to Dom, he's going to perhaps be leveling himself, knows he's been 3-betting a lot, so he's going to be thinking in his head that someone could 4-bet him light here. So he could, yep, and he does, and that's exactly what he was thinking. He goes all in with King Jack, and he gets snapped off by Scott's 2 kings.
2 times.
2 times is fine with me.
Okay,
Scott's in really good shape here, just about as good of a shape as you can be in, all in pre-flop.
You said it several times, Scott, that Dominique was a little too fast. He was going to run into trouble, get his hands burnt by fire. That's what this looks like here. On the plus side, this pot is like 50,000 euros. And he's got outs.
It's a pretty good flop for him, in all relatively.
That's about as good a flop as
10.
you got.
His equity has actually increased, hasn't it?
Yep. Still just a 10. We'll save him.
9 was a spade.
You're just sick.
But they're doing it 2 times.
On the plus side, I got rid of a lot of scary cards on
You
that
did.
board.
That's overall a good board for you now.
Yeah.
It's not a great board for kings in general.
No.
The special sweating you can do when you do it twice.
Where are the money?
Here's a 20 stack. 35.
That's not a good
36,
flop at
39,
all.
39.
For king jack there, needs running jacks. Or making chop with running fives, but that's going to be it.
Not a good spot for Dominykas.
Chop,
And actually,
one chop card in the deck to quarter the pot.
Quarter.
that would be weird.
Whoa, jeez.
Doesn't get it.
He was pretty exciting, Dominykas. Obviously, very hyper-aggressive, Scott.
Take care, guys.
Yeah, he was definitely playing with fire his whole time there. I feel like he was just trying to get it in. I mean, he just didn't have a call button. That middle button on his mouse or whatever was just broken, and these guys, that might work in low stakes games, but it's not going to work versus these guys. They all know he was doing it too often, and just not going to give him credit.
Get in there.
We're going to have a short break, and don't you want to know how it turns out? It's drama at the big game 6. Back at the Party Poker Big Game 6, we have taken a break and controversy erupts. Now, just to be clear at what's happened, the players were shown the actual footage of the under-the-table cameras to verify on their own what happened.
I used to flop 6 of hearts.
Wow, it was 6.
At issue here is a private side bet between Tony G, Alec, Torelli, and Scott Seiver.
This is like the first time in the history of poker where I know the hand better than the player himself. This is like unbelievable. It's history. I know what he has and he doesn't even know what he has.
From the floor's perspective, this doesn't.
Look at this. Look at this.
You have to be happy. You have to be happy.
He's still tilted.
The rules of poker are
None
very
of you guys
clear.
even know what he's tilted about.
Unless a player turns over his hand, it cannot win the pot. This has happened to everybody in their life, or most people. Some people might not know. But
Lack of implementation.
Tony G has taken his money back, and now there's an issue as to whether or not the terms of the bet.
I think they are paying him. He gets his 3K back.
They're each paying him 3,000 euros
it's a
now that he's
6,000
won
swing.
the bet.
Double check those hole cards.
They're gonna rib Phil. You think they're gonna let Phil forget this tonight, tomorrow,
I don't think they're gonna let Phil
this
forget
month,
this
this
for
year?
a long time.
Strange, this waiting between like.
See him in a couple of years. Hey Phil, remember that time you folded the best hand?
Interesting.
Like 100,000.
Flop here. Moseley's got the two-way straight draw.
1,000. Raise 3,075.
And this pot could easily escalate. Now just remember how deep these guys are playing, right, Scott? I mean,
Like, yeah, a 9 here could be an action card. But yeah, that's why it's funny. The deeper these games get, sometimes the less action you get out of it because people have fear for losing their whole stack, and both sides will play pot control, and ending up being in smaller pots.
Obviously didn't change.
Like,
Wow.
there's your action card.
wow, he could just get stacked off.
That
Moseley's got the nuts right now.
Yeah, but Moseley only has, has 65,000. He's pretty deep here to get it all in, but they both have really big hands. Phil's ace and nines, it's first and third pair.
Well, Moseley's going to ask the question, is he going to ask it now or later? How strong a hand does he put Phil Laak on it? And is he better off overall raising right now or not?
But don't you think, like, metagame-wise, it's like a bad spot to bluff Phil?
Yeah, I don't think, yeah.
Like, I don't think he's going to be bluffing in this spot very often. And I think Phil knows that.
He's made a huge, sorry, he's raised
to 17.5 total, about 3 times bigger than Phil's bet.
yeah, and not just that, but this sets up basically a pot-sized bet for the river if he wants it.
Pot and a
Moseley's
half.
got like,
Moseley has 47,000, and there's with the call, yeah, you're right. It's about 43,000 in the pot. Moseley is about 47,000 behind. I suppose we'll see that on the river. And Phil could not boat up, and Moseley might jam here. But this would be just a terrible time to bluff Phil.
Does Phil realize that?
He always thinks about these levels, and I think that'll definitely come across his head.
I haven't seen this happen in a long time. I know.
You know, Moseley has to decide how big to go here.
That's why I think he might not bet the whole pot, because I think Moseley's going to realize that no one's going to be putting this huge bluff into him. He might bet 30,000 or 25,000.
30,000, 31,000.
31,000.
That's a big bet.
It is a very big bet, but this will be really tough for Phil to fold here. Here's a really big hand. This would be a great fold if Phil can make it.
I feel like I'm
well, and
I don't want my telltale.
you know, from what we've seen of Laak,
10 jack, I guess, right?
yeah, he can make a big fold.
there.
He can make a big fold.
Phil knows that he's representing the 10 jack here. He's already said it out loud. I mean, what do you got, the 10 jack, kid?
I got one pair.
But can he make a big fold right now?
Phil just said he has one pair. He's probably joking. I hope he realizes he does, in fact, have two pair.
In the best sort of possible manner. I was like, oh fuck. I don't really beat a hand that's qualified.
I limped, and then he raised. So, like, you know, I mean, I flopped pretty
I mean, it's pretty much 10 jack or nothing. There is no other hand that Moseley would bet this big for value. You know, you would not be betting this big right now with a set, would you?
I mean, well, a set
He's
is
made the
basically the
laydown.
same. It's a good fold by Phil. I think Phil realized there that Andy's rarely bluffing in that spot. It's just not a good time to make a play there.
And for Moseley right now, he has not only a big stack,
Watching and she saw like the ace-6 thing. And she
he's
goes,
basically
you got
60,000 years ahead. He's basically got a stack that's close to being on a par with Laak and Torelli.
I love that. That is great.
I know.
That is so good. I love it.
It's like, baby, I told you not to put the money in when
To be
you
fair, I
said
think she only saw the percents on the turn. She
Yeah,
was
yeah.
7%, and you somehow won. And then like half an hour later, it's like, oh, you didn't win. You suck, but you won.
Why'd you put all your money in at 7%? Shouldn't do
Call.
You ain't kidding. Why did you just like throw all the money away in the end?
I don't know. I'm happy.
Did you just like get tilted up in the end?
I think so. The Lithuanian.
This pot's three ways,
It's a shame because he was like.
and you could just feel that the action right now is going to be so determined by who can just keep their head straight.
Check. Check. Bet 900. Call.
Phil's the only person who has a piece of this. Scott takes a stab at it with the ace high.
2 players.
Phil's got top pair.
First player checks.
Proves
It's-
to top 2 here.
Seiver's not a massive
All check.
flop better. It looks like he's determined to shut down here. Not the best card in the world for Phil Laak.
2,700.
2,700.
It's betting for value now. 2,700 at a pot size bet.
Wow, if Scott Seiver is thinking about raising here, I mean,
That's what he's thinking about. I don't think he's thinking about calling.
to me it's kind of odd, isn't it, Scott? Because like Phil Laak could easily, if he had the jack, could have a jack of diamonds here. I mean, he definitely could have a flush, but
Looks like Scott's
Seiver.
thinking about making a play here.
Wow.
Call.
Oh, he calls.
Called with ace high?
I don't know what he was thinking he could beat.
He called with ace high.
Be like a 5.
He must have reckoned. He's trying to play this back.
It's what we thought it was.
I was thinking the same thing.
How could I fold? Maybe I call and he just mucks. He just mucks the
Extra
whip.
big people have.
You can never fold the river now.
Really, I thought
Scott
about it.
hoping
I was
that
like,
after he
I can't
called, Phil
fold
would
now.
just muck. And even though he didn't have the best.
Maybe like 5% of the time he just mucks the winner.
You always,
There's a lot of
your own
overlap.
self-evaluation, Scott, is always so different than other people's evaluations of you.
Right.
You know, staying up long hours, playing long hours, the big swings of poker, you don't realize the physical strain and the mental strain it takes. And honestly, if nobody's, until you've played a 24-hour or
whatever, even a longer or shorter session, a long session, it's hard to sort of empathize with what it can do to your brain, right? You see a fog. I mean, what's the longest session you've played, Scott?
Oh, nothing close to something like this. I don't think I've ever done 24 hours.
Have you ever gotten in just an absolute fog, though?
Yeah,
where
that can happen. And sometimes you don't realize it. You're just kind of running on autopilot and maybe see a little spots.
Check. 3 players.
And sometimes you make a big mistake in the game, and that should be an alarm bell. I mean, I've definitely been in games for too long, and I make like a stupid blunder, and I'm like, that's the point where it's like, well, I think that means it's time to go home. And I think that's the point here for Phil.
Check.
Where it's just so insurmountable. Like, if you're going to make a mistake like that, then you definitely should not be playing in this game.
The thing about Phil Laak is, it's not like he's done this once, not like he's done this twice, as far as playing long sessions. He may play as many long sessions as any poker player in the game today, you know.
Nonetheless, that aside, I think everybody at the table wants him to stay. I think they're all seeing like this as an opportunity for him to bleed more chips.
Check this out. Laak's bet on air. Seiver's raised. Well, it's not air, but it's a thin flush. Excuse me, a thin straight draw. And Laak with the 3-bet. Now, this is where things get really interesting because Seiver took an initial read here, Scott. Is he done with it?
Yep. It was a great play by Phil.
Big raise right there.
That's the bam, bam, bam. And it's that kind of stuff that Laak was doing earlier.
If I was bluffing there, it was more of the wheels are off than any kind of strategy-based thing.
All good bluffs start with that.
Did you hear that?
No, I missed it.
All good bluffs start with the wheels falling off.
Yeah, and then they end with them somehow back on.
One man struggle with the highs and lows of the big game sum up the tale of the 6th staging of this 48-hour cash game. Sam Trickett started out on this epic journey on the back foot, racking up one losing hand after another.
Phil Laak off to a great start.
He battled hard topping up his dwindling stack. But then his game turned a corner and the cards fell for Trickett, and that loss was soon turned into a profit.
That's a big misstep right there by Ace.
But the game turned against the Englishman once more, and he finds himself down.
Just hopefully get a few more hands because, like I was saying before, when you play as aggressive as me, your image is never good, so like bluffs don't go through as easy. So it's nice to just show my hand every now and then so you just can get bluffs through in the future. So just want to show my hand sometimes and have something in a pot when I'm betting more than 10K.
Do you think it will make a difference as well that you've had a rest? Some of those guys have been on there for quite a while now.
I don't really know because I've never like sat in the booth and watched people's game vary as like how tired they get or what have you, but hopefully they're all playing bad and I can go in there and play well and get some hands.
How'd you go before, Sam? To get out of it?
As Trickett returns to the game, you have to ask, what comes next?
He's just looking at the money on the table and thinking to himself, Lord, what can I do here?
Do you mind increasing the game?
I would love to.
Sam Trickett sitting back down with 44,000, which was the stack that he left the big game with when going to sleep.
We'll keep the blinds the same, and we'll do a 50 ante, that's all. Just while it's short-handed.
And, you know, knowing Sam a little bit, Scott, I think he's just very interested in getting as much money onto the table as he can because he always wants to be playing with as big a stack as he can in relation to everyone else on the table.
Sure, that's what he does. He likes to play deep stack poker.
You don't want to do a 50 ante?
Thinks he's in a good spot right now, and I believe so too.
Just to run it.
I want to do it too, baby. I want to do it once. Do you want to do it once, Sam? I would really loosen the game up.
Once, for sure.
We can do it the 3 ways.
I'll do it.
Everyone will fold.
10K each or something?
No,
Let's do 10K.
I'll do 10K.
This is like the best thing I could do with 120,000. Just put it in the middle and run it. That's what I want you to do. It's the only way out. It is. Find out if I'm really destined to be unlucky. What if I win it? Then I'm like, well, I never would have run that. I never would have got there. Yeah, the whole butterfly helped you.
I'll run it with you, Phil, though. Whatever you got in front of you, I'll run it. I'll got you covered, and we can run it. Just heads up.
That is true. Tony will run it with you. I mean, you got it. It's 40,000.
Wow, Tony's actually stepped up here. Tony says he'll flip.
I'm
He'll.
afraid I won't be able to read my hand right or something. I think this is
We'll open the hands. We'll open them. So you won't have
Meanwhile, Sam Trickett has an up and down straight draw,
I remember this day.
and Seiver has an open-ended straight draw.
I remember this time where he like squeezed on the button with ace king, and then I like re-squeezed with ace rag, and then he re-squeezed, and I was like, oh, it's 20 to collect 40, so I put it in. And then a whole bunch of
Get a
cards
brick.
floating like, and then like a half an hour elapsed, and
Let's see who
my
wants
buddy's
this pot.
phone blew up, and he was telling me, hey, so you had ace 6, and I'm like, that would make sense. I never looked at my hand before I folded it. I kind of forgot what was going on.
He bet 7?
How often
Did he bet 7 into 5?
Yep, and it works. Something Phil Laak would do.
How many times have I done that without the cameras on?
This game doesn't harken back to those sterilized high-stakes poker shows where they start filming at 9 in the morning and finish at 5 p.m. This is so real. You've got Moseley, who's about 10 hours in the game. You've got Trickett, who had played for 24, has slept for 8, and is now back stuck.
$1 million in a briefcase and just checked it into the.
But just feeling top of the game. You've got Laak, who's the biggest winner, but is in just a cloud. He's in a cloud of dust.
Yeah, I think he's 32 hours deep at this point.
Torelli,
Can you imagine just
who is the second biggest winner, and even though he's played, what, like 25 out of the last 33 altogether?
I wouldn't be able to fly for like the rest
He
of my life.
must be tired.
He was an idiot.
I just wouldn't be able to do it.
You checked?
Yeah, I checked.
Oh, you know the person.
Yeah. You're right, son.
Oh my
Nice. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look, check this out. Check this out. Moseley and Seiver both have top pair, and flop's gotten checked, and Laak has just spiked the Duke.
I hope to see a Phil Laak bomb on the river.
Raise 3,500.
Well, it's bet and raise, and once Laak insta calls there, I mean, how is Seiver supposed to think about this? You know, could Laak have a draw here? Would he?
I'm gonna make more of a habit of checking.
It's definitely hard for Seiver to continue here with the King Jack, but he feels that his hand is just too. It's hard to put either of his opponents on a deuce, and or an ace king based on how the hand was played.
I mean, the great thing about Laak's hand right now is that he's in position, so he's going to get to bomb this river.
Yeah, I don't think Laak is scared that anybody has a 4, so he can bet this pretty liberally. The 4 really doesn't change much at all. Nobody really has a 4 here to have the hand played out.
He's bet the pot
into 2 people.
And
this might have worked a lot better if it was into 1 opponent, but with Scott acting first with Andy behind him, it's going to be really hard for him to make this call. Andy might make the call.
I feel like the 4 might not have helped Laak's hand out in that much. I mean, could he have had like a 4 of hearts with a heart draw type of thing? If he did have a draw, it might have had the 4 of hearts in it. Or does it not matter?
Yeah.
Too big a bet anyway.
I mean, that's the only kind of hand.
Phil Laak, he's just won about 30,000 straight, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's doing fine. He's getting a stack to about 150,000. If he, gets in some good spots, he can get that stack to 200,000.
Tony G kind of piddling away of late, and Seiver, who at one stage had been ahead about 30 or 40,000, is starting to not
Raise 2,000.
go forward.
That would be a good move.
Scott's opening with the 10-8 of diamonds. But Sam wants to get in there and get busy. 3 bets to 2,000 with the King Jack.
Seiver's got position on him. And I guess Moseley's got the hand.
Thanks. I mean, the game play's so big, it feels like you can make a 60K error and just like whatever, wish it back somehow. I mean, I know you can't be making 69 errors and justifying it, but for some
And
reason,
Bink. Wow. Andy Moseley has just flopped the joint.
I think it's because I just had a rush.
Maybe he is
It doesn't hurt
golden.
as much.
It's definitely a possibility, and both his opponents also have a piece of it.
Check.
Scott with bottom pair and a straight draw, and Sam with pair of jacks.
I check.
23.
And it checks around.
It'll be interesting to see either how much Moseley can win or how little the others can lose.
Wow, he chose to check it a second time.
Wow.
And checks around
I mean,
again.
it could come a diamond.
He still has the
I'm at
absolute nuts,
126.
but
Play
there's
this hand so
and he checks it a third time. It doesn't look like Scott's going to bet there.
Harmless.
Nuts.
I play this hand so well, it's unbelievable. Oh my god.
Wow.
No.
Sam
fluffed
Trickett's
the
having a
nuts.
big smile on his face. I mean,
Straight draw.
Feeling great
Flush
right now.
straight draw.
Now you're feeling great.
Pair, flush draw, and the gut
check it
draw.
out.
When?
I mean, both.
On the turn. I turned the flush draw.
Both.
Did you see Moseley do that smile as well when the flop came down?
Yeah, I was like, oh shit, he's happy.
On the turn, I should bet there really to get value from flush draws and stuff like that. But he was smiling.
That's what I tell. I just smile when I've got
I was
the
like gonna
King
bet
Jack.
to like double barrel. I'm like, oh, Moseley's way too happy here.
Moseley's actually laughing.
I've never seen him actually smile before, and here he's giggling.
Welcome back to Vienna, where two big names have left, opening up opportunities for others. Both Scott Seiver and Tony G have left, having made quite an impression on this game.
Kings. That's what they were saying.
The players just talking about what they want the blinds to be right now.
Pretty sick.
You must have just thought that he was bluffing.
I mean, this has always essentially been a 25-50 game, although at
You just, yeah,
different times there's been a 100 straddle that was
Yeah.
I'll tell you after the hand. So it's
optional slash mandatory, and a 200 straddle that has also been optional slash mandatory.
I was like shipping.
There's like the 800 in, yeah.
I was like shipping the nuts with ace jack.
Players talking about the big pot between Torelli and Scott Seiver when Seiver laid down the kings. And what Trickett's saying is that he thought he had the nuts.
Well, Scott
Which
just...
is what you thought as well, that he was doing it for value.
Right, he was doing it for value. Scott actually just spoke to me about that hand outside on the break. He said that at the end of the hand, Alec assured him that he had the best hand and showed him his cards and said, no, I wasn't bluffing you. Shows him the ace jack, and then Scott like pretends to be like, phew, and like then walks away tilted. He's like, at least give him a half an hour to sweat about it.
22, 40, right, Sam?
Yeah.
Call.
Pot here, and Torelli's bet second pair. Fold all the way around, and that card is going to make things very interesting. My God, what an action card!
Yeah. Now Trickett has top two. Torelli has kings and jacks.
Check. Check.
Wow, weird check by Trickett.
There's been a lot of checking recently. And that's going to be an action killer. There's a 4-card straight on the board. Let's see if both of these players, either one of these players could potentially bet this hand for value. Whoever decides to bet, there's just going to be a call.
You think one bet's going in either
I
way?
expect a small bet and then a call.
Check.
There's no reason.
Check.
Oh,
Check.
wow. I'm pretty surprised that
We
Sam
have-
didn't bet top two in position there. I don't
You
think
lose two bets, queen of check.
Torelli is checking a straight there very often.
What?
However, he didn't want to be put in a difficult situation
He wins.
if he is to be check raised.
Oh, I thought the dealer was killing that hand. All right. Wow, that was a weird hand.
For Trickett, it's about 6,000
Yeah, it's not bad.
that he's picked up since he sat back down in this game.
Oh,
And
is that why?
he's on his
Oh,
way.
so maybe I was right then.
You were. I mean, you're right.
I felt like you had a strong hand betting that flop into 3 guys when he cold calls.
Yeah, when he cold calls, I would insta check. I didn't know. That's why I went like this on the flop. I'm like, what the hell? He has cards, and I was like, oh.
At 2 sevens.
Yeah, but just the fact that you cold called, like, I'm not gonna do.
I missed 4K value.
25 out, 50
I'm
up.
gonna call a bet on the turn. Once I hit that.
Ante's in.
That's it. Whatever, you lost 4K.
And there's so much respect among these players.
Raise. 300.
Obviously, Trickett and Moseley know each other quite well, and both rate each other's games quite highly. And a lot of grudging respect for Phil Laak over these 30 hours that he's shown some real game.
He has, until he lost his mind.
Maybe it all fits into sort of the...
But we, of course, think he did that intentionally for some weird Phil Laak level.
Definitely, it's gonna gain him some sort of weird karmic reward about 20 years in the future.
1,300.
Torelli's sort of played this funny from the start, but when you check the flop like that, you pretty much have to call, what, 2 streets here? I mean...
It's a tricky card on the turn, and river for that matter, but when you check back on the flop, you're definitely more inclined to call in position on the subsequent 2 streets. Because you think you have the best hand there in the flop, and then you're keeping the pot smaller, and you're also allowing your opponent to bluff. And you can extract value out of bluffs that you wouldn't have gotten had you bet.
It's a big bet on the river.
But that's what Phil does. It's actually only 6,000 into 9,000. Phil usually bets more.
I want to see it, says Torelli.
Yeah, why not?
And he does.
I'm actually surprised Phil didn't overbet there, because he's been doing that all game long.
He's still got them off balance a little bit. If there's been one small hole to Torelli's game, and it really isn't. It's just turned out sort of that way. It's that
I'm beat, but it's like he doesn't have a flush.
Laak has had him slightly off balance with getting paid off on the river a couple times. And for Phil Laak, he's now up 140,000. Who needed the ace-6 anyway? He's just going to pick up where he left off.
Raise 200. Yeah, sure.
The massage girls have had just a bumper week. I mean, what did Jungle Man play? 24 hours, and he had a massage the entire time.
Yeah, so did Sam. Wow.
Oh my gosh.
Wow. This is for a 4-handed game. We've got kings, jacks, and ace king. There could be some fireworks here.
So Alec Torelli opened this up on the button to 700. Moseley's made it 2,200
with the jacks,
and Laak has flatted with the kings.
And now this is perfect for Laak because Torelli can put in the raise here, the 4th bet, with the ace king, and Laak has it set up perfectly. And there he is, just eating his food like he doesn't have a care in the world.
Oh my gosh, he's sitting there eating his fruit salad with the 2 kings. Now.
Looks really good.
Alex should really think about this, because if he does put the 4 bet in, Moseley's playing an effective 100,000
stack. Oh, he's on the button with ace king in a 4-handed game. He can definitely put in another bet here.
You pretty much have to. This is going to explode. But, you know, they're so deep that at some stage, even if you're Laak, you're thinking, I don't want to get 140,000 in with kings, do you?
Laak will get it in here.
6,700.
Call. That's very cagey by Moseley.
You have to make a big raise here, Phil. You have to. The way you played this.
Call.
Oh wow.
To play to get out of it.
I'm very surprised. When you called the first time, the way he's been playing, I wouldn't recommend it for all players, but he makes these random kind of really big over raises sometime, and this would be like really one of those great spots to do that in.
I mean,
14,000.
He could have won a much bigger pot.
I don't know if this is over. Maybe it is.
I think this is over.
Oh my gosh! That would have been insane if Laak had. Now Phil is leering
Laak could have squeezed there.
If Laak had popped before the flop.
And Laak has a reputation for making squeeze plays in that spot randomly, seemingly randomly, when he has the right feel for just
make it like 10,000 and he makes
putting the hammer down, putting in a bomb, a really big bet, with oftentimes with much lighter hands.
See what you done here? Sounds like an absolute train wreck.
I quite like his line if he's doing it. I hate it.
Raise two. Sounds like a great line if he's doing it for value.
I like his bet size if he's
yeah,
he's just like counting away, trying to see where he is.
Yeah, what was he doing?
It's pretty strong to just put you on the set, which then goes for that line on the flop. It's like Jack, 4 deuce rainbow. You're not always going to check raise.
Like I went for my line.
Shove a set.
I went for my line just because I thought like.
It was an amazing hand, obviously, Scott. You thought that Seiver had to call every time, and it sounds like these guys do as well.
Seems like they're in agreement with me that he was raising. It was a good line as long as he was raising to call off in that spot. And the range of hands that he could have had, that Alec could have had to beat him, was just too narrow in a set of deuces and a set of fours there. That you just kind of have to call off when you're getting 2.5 to 1 or whatever he was getting at that point.
Fold. Yeah, just
raise, check, fold.
Yeah.
If I don't hit.
If you hit something,
check back 2 pair, just in case they got a better.
Watch out for the better, yeah.
In case the jack peels off and.
Oh, this is so.
And then I get, if the king pops up, I get it all.
Oh yeah.
Which is so hard for me to have to the house.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
Not be good here. He checks the turn.
All I needed to happen, I'm leaving.
1,200.
Moseley is right now playing Laak a little bit at his own game, which is this is Laak's thing. Just check call with top pair.
You might bet, might call.
If the river's a blank,
And I'll give Moseley 2 pair.
I'm gonna call.
Still gonna bet it either way. Definitely thought his jack was good on the turn.
He might have worse. He might, like, I mean.
Yeah.
Phil will call.
No, he didn't. He did not.
I'm gonna call.
Raise 25,000.
I mean,
it's interesting to turn this hand into a bluff here that had value.
But it's not just a bluff. He's raised 22K.
Nice, Phil. Interesting. At least his alarm bells were right that he did have a 2-pair kind of hand that he could push him off with a bomb there. And he could represent a flush in that spot. He's the only player at the table that does these kind of bombs. Yeah.
He's the only bomber.
And he's never been looked up. When he's only done it as a bluff a few times. He hasn't been looked up there, but usually when he has it as well, he hasn't paid off.
Phil Laak is back. After a dramatic fall down in the profit stakes after throwing away a winning hand, the American has reclaimed his premier place in this game. It's taken him a couple of hours to find his way back to the 150K mark, but he's done it. Alec Torelli, having topped the 100K point, has fallen back down to the mid-60s. Andy Moseley looks solid as he closes in on Torelli's total, while Sam Trickett is back in the game and backfighting the demons that have plagued him for so much of this game. Four-handed at the moment, but plenty of opportunities for new faces as the Party Poker Big Game 6 heads the final stretch.